Sensitivity is intelligence. With grace and skill, you have abundance. Welcome to the Psychic Hour. Host Kelly Brickle is a psychic medium healer, numerologist, and teacher. Her passions are learning about the soul and energy. Whether it's through spirit, emotion, or vibrational numbers, there's always a pathway of information waiting to help. Now, here is your host of the Psychic Hour, Kelly Brickle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Psychic Hour on WLTKDB. Let's Talk Radio. Welcome. So I'm on the road and traveling. That's why I have a different background behind me. Different colors, right? Different colors, different atmosphere. So welcome. We are going to be having our interview series on Wednesday with Rosa Raya. She's a healer. She's an intuitive. She can connect to the other side too. She's wonderfully talented, and I'm really honored to have her on the show today. We'll be bringing her on in about 10 minutes. So you can put down your questions, you can put down your comments. It's always great to engage like that. It really is. That's a special part of the show where you can engage with us live. So I always encourage. It is a great day today. Yes, just kind of soaking it all in. I'm on the road, so there's always something new to try, right? Whether it's a restaurant, whether it's walking around, seeing the surroundings, always something new to try. You never know what you're gonna find. The topic of the day, because we always have a topic. Um, I wanted to focus on messages from spirit. It's not something I talk about a lot because sometimes, when talking about mediumship or talking about loved ones, some of those signs can almost seem general. On the other side, they can be very sacred, don't get me wrong, but they can always seem kind of general, like you see pennies, maybe you see like a butterfly, right? But those are so important to talk about because it goes so much deeper than that. And I want to touch base on some of my experiences and talk about common signs and symbols that a lot of people see. And it's important to talk about that because it is universal for some people, and also the more unique signs, right? So, very fun to talk about. Oh, hello, Tracy. Welcome. So diving in, I think a common symbol are like the pennies, right? Pennies are everywhere. Change is everywhere. Coins are everywhere. And it really goes back to kind of your own innate memories connected to this person. I see pennies in connection to my grandmother, and she always had change on her. She did. And I just, for some reason, out of all the grandparents, I associate like coin purses with her. And I just remember her like kind of always having her purse around. And like she always kind of encouraged me to save, and she would encourage me to just like be really conscious with my money, and just like kind of conversations like that. So it goes hand in hand of why I would see that for her. Whenever I see a sign or a symbol for any other family member, it isn't a penny, it isn't a coin, it's only for one of my grandmothers. And it's kind of funny because I will see them when I'm sometimes traveling, usually at an airport though. I have a keen memory as well with going to the airport with my grandmother. One time, we actually went to Puerto Rico to visit her mother, and her family. And I remember that my grandmother was really overwhelmed by going to the airport. And so that's part of the reason I came, like, kind of to help and also to be with family. And, I was just like making sure I made her feel comfortable because she's like, this is, crazy. I'm not used to like having to go from gate to gate, right? It was an overwhelming experience for her. And luckily I had traveled more. And so whenever I go to an airport, I'll usually see a penny in a really random place, like a corner um, of, like, let's say where the TSA checkout is, or on the floor while everyone's walking around. I'll just see out of the corner of my eye, and I usually never think to see pennies. I don't. So that's kind of like my little ode from spirit and connection with her if I'm not already thinking about her. Um, with my other grandmother, it's hummingbirds, and I know a lot of people have connections to birds. Birds are a very common spirit sign, and a very common type of bird that a lot of people connect to are cardinals. Cardinals come in from spirit a lot, and if you've ever gone to a psychic or a medium, sometimes that is one of the birds that they bring up the most. Like if you see a cardinal, no, that's a sign from spirit. So there's the general signs, and sometimes, yeah, it's a matter of like there's something about the energy of a bird that will connect you to your loved one, whether they were nature lovers, whether they were more like kind of an airy or cerebral kind of personality. There has to be kind of a reason why they choose that sign for you. Is it the only one that you're gonna pay attention to? The cardinal is bright red, you're not gonna miss it, right? In the Midwest, usually they show up, you're not gonna miss it per se, and that's kind of why I think cardinals come in a lot. They wanna make sure that if there's an energy connected to that sign, that you can't miss them, and that when they show up, it's a reminder to tune into the loved one that is around because it really why do we have signs? Why do we have symbols? That's not important. The spirit's important. Our loved ones are important. Grandma, grandpa, a child, a husband, um, you know, a cousin. Those are the important considerations, but sometimes we actually need signs to go, "Oh, I should stop and think," and really not so much think, I should stop and feel and sense and kinda just tune into whether it's a memory or a passing just consideration because I can invite my loved one in and just kind of feel them for a moment or I'm reminded like, hey, actually I think they're right with me. They're visiting right with me right now because spirit, our loved ones, they come and visit us multiple times a day. Just like with our loved ones who are alive, if there's love, they're thinking about us multiple times a day. Just like think about it. If you're a mother or a father, you're thinking about your children. Oh, I wonder what she's doing today. I wonder what he's doing today. I wonder what the kids are up to, right? It's natural, that connection of love, that connection of family. It's incredibly natural. And then when people pass, we're starting to learn, being energy sensitive, that that doesn't go away. It's still every day. It's still so many times, and the spirit world really has to teach us, and we have to learn about catching the attention of the continuation of life all around us and how we are constantly still connected. Hey, Jackie, it's great to see you. Oh, yes, Tracy. Yes, I was thinking about ravens and crows, and I started talking about the cardinals, and it kind of flew out of my head. And you're right. Oh, ravens and crows. I can't tell the difference. So the difference can be hard to tell because if you have like a ginormous crow, it gets kind of tricky. But you can tell by the size of their beak. Like a raven's beak looks a lot meatier, almost. It's like bigger proportional. The head looks really meaty, like sturdy on a raven, and the claws are bigger. And ravens just have bigger bodies, but I've seen ginormous crows, but they just don't have the facial structure of that of a raven. So that's something that can help distinguish between the two at times. Ravens sometimes travel alone. They can be in packs, but they can travel alone a little bit more than crows sometimes. Again, these are just randoms talking about ravens and crows. The reason we're even talking about it is because, and I'm even talking about it because Tracy, I've had the same exact thoughts. Raven and crows, they are connected to the metaphysical for a lot of people. They're connected to mysticism. They're connected to even shamanism. And I'd love to talk to Rose about that. Rosa Raya, our guest, because she works with so many different types of energy medicine and energetic healing. And she does have knowledge in shamanism that I would love to hear her take on the symbolism of ravens, crows, and other signs. Um, and yes, it's a very common acknowledgement that synchronicity is around when you see a raven or a crow. Or if a raven or a crow follows you kind of around too, it's letting you know that you have a little bit of magic in you. You have, the intuitive nature in you, and it's kind of calling to you. So that is another sign. It's usually acknowledgement from the spirit world where it's like, hey, like you're in sync. Hey, like time to wake up. Hey, we're around. You're supported, right? And so there's just these common kind of symbols attached to kind of coins or to animals sometimes. But there's also more specific. Hello, Jessica. Great to see you again. Um, there's more specific symbols. Like with my grandmother, for instance, my other grandmother, I think about hummingbirds in her a lot. Now, I have a sign for hummingbird too as well. When I see a hummingbird in my mind, I usually think of friendship. I attach it to friendship, but I also attach it to my grandma. So I have more than one meaning for hummingbirds. And I know sometimes hummingbirds are a sign for people, and they're more prevalent in California where I live. But not everyone has the sign of hummingbird for spirit. So again, I have, how can I put this? I have fond memories of seeing hummingbirds with my grandmother being around. She always would have a hummingbird feeder. So that's why. It has to connect with the personality of the spiritual loved one. It has to mean something in your heart. Sometimes it is a more generic sign because that's how they get us to pay attention. And then that sign does evolve. The more you go, wow, this is my sign for my grandparent, right? My loved one, my husband, my father, my child. It starts evolving and changing. It really does. Um, Gosh, I have so many signs I could go into, and it's really cool to talk about. And in a minute, we're gonna bring in Rosa. Just the time just flies. It really does. There's always something to talk about, and I'm always blessed and grateful for that. Um, Gosh, I wanted to tell one quick story, and then we'll go to break. It's kind of funny. I remember, so I was at this demonstration, and it happened to be like Lisa Williams was demonstrating, and there was like other student mediums around, and she was on platform, and she was talking about like connecting to the symbols, right? She's like, I always can connect to um sometimes how a loved one shows that they're around, and your loved one showing me that they give you money to let you know that they're around. And the audience member was like, yes, I can take that. And then she starts kind of laughing because she's like, whoa. And this is not small money like a penny. So like my grandma gives me a penny, but Lisa was talking about on platform like your loved one helps you find like these bills on the ground. They're like $20 bills, $50 bills. And the audience member's like, yeah, it's the strangest thing. Like we've been finding like $50 bills just randomly in the streets. And she's laughing, Lisa's laughing. She's like, I wish that would happen to me. I think everyone wishes it would happen to, because that's unique. That is not a typical quarter, penny, nickel story. Silver dollar, even $50. That's crazy. $20 bills just dropping out in the streets. That's amazing. So, never be surprised what spirit can do. There's always one amazing story out there that just personifies how fun it can be as well as how loving it can be. So, all right, we're going to be right back. We'll see you in a few, and we'll be talking to Rosa Reza. Rosa Raya. I got a tongue twister today. I'm waking up, right? We'll be back in a few. Take care. Hello. Welcome back, everybody. I want to introduce our wonderful guest today, Rosa Raya. Rosa Raya is a sound channeler, healer, speaker, teacher, and spiritual guide. She has helped many people over the past 20 years on their path to healing and self discovery. With the help of spirit and guides, Rosa practices ancient traditional healing and ceremonial ways of our ancestors. With a warm welcome, I want to say hello to Rosa. Hello. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah,
There
hi.
we go. Yes. Hey.
Hi, how are you? So good to be here.
It's awesome to see you.
Oh,
Welcome.
nice. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. I was having a little bit of technical issues, but I think we're good, right?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly,
Perfect.
and it's all good. It's all good. It's perfect. So, oh my gosh, I had the pleasure of meeting you. Speaking of Lisa Williams, I met you at Lisa Williams School, trying to do the math, like 8 years ago, something like that. Eight
Yes,
years
it's
ago.
been a while. Yeah,
And it
how time goes by so quickly. And I was just listening to you share some of the stories, and boy, that brought back a lot of good memories as well. And it's just been such an amazing journey.
it has been like met you about 8 years ago, and then I haven't seen you in a couple years. So it's so cool to you know say hi again. It really is.
Yes.
Please let me know what you've been up to. I know you've been teaching a lot of classes. I know you've been holding ceremonies. You do so many different types of healing work and facilitating space for people, and not only working with their bodies but working with their soul. Like, you
Yes.
really are a leader of helping people learn about their self.
Yes. Thank you. So, gosh, where do I begin? I've been so busy in a beautiful way. It's like everything kind of just snowballed into a colorful, amazing spiritual path for me where I do incorporate a little bit of everything. So it's a traditional, but also more modernized. And spirit has shown me how to combine both because we're in a different world now, right? So our
Yes.
ancestors were living in different times. So my thing has been where I've had to learn over these years to really understand the ways of our ancestors, but then how do I bring it forward to now in the modern times so that they stay alive, but they're also that they're useful and they can be understood, but also still honored, still respected, and still carried forward. Because it's important that we don't lose our traditions, but also then be mindful of where we're at in these days. So I did. I went delved deeply into learning the mind, body, soul, spirit, and how the importance of how to really look into every aspect. And so where I'm at right now is I've been really connecting and just having a passion for teaching and sharing more than anything, sharing my journey and and how important it is to have that balance, so it's basically teaching the medicine wheel. And by teaching the medicine wheel is teaching how to have a relationship with ourselves first and foremost. And once we recognize and know we're in the medicine wheel, we're maybe not so balanced, then we can delve into those areas and understand who we are, where we're at, what our needs are in general. So this can really branch out into not just healing, but in our daily lives, in our practice, in our workspace. And so I've really just, man, I am in loving and enjoying every part of it because it's a different path. Or not a path. It's I've always been on my path. I just heard you've always been on your path, but now it's evolved to where I'm owning it. I'm embracing it. I'm really just having fun with it, and letting go of all the everything that comes with like, oh my gosh. And I think we all go through a little bit of that, and I'm finally just in my power and sharing the things that I think are valuable for us to know and how to walk in this, especially in this time, right? How to walk in our power, how to walk in our beauty, how to walk in our grace, and honor all of that, but also very important, how to honor everybody else as well. So it's an ebb and flow of just being and coexisting, and it's just so layered. I mean, I can just keep going as you can tell, because this is my passion. So yeah, I'm doing so much. And I like to say, the way I say it is, I'm master of all, right? Because there's people that would have this stigma where you say, "Oh my God, you're delving into so many areas. You're not going to really learn anything." And I'm like, "No, that's a limited belief." So I'm breaking that,
Yeah.
that because it's not true for me. And I'm like, "No, I can learn everything and then still be, balanced in it all."
Everything kind of builds off of each other and it just makes you more well-rounded, and then it just leads you where you need to go, like the universe is giving you all this feedback of I have to learn this now and learn this now to even be an even better, intuitive and even better medium and even better healer. And so that's part of, I think, the modernization of what you were talking about. You were talking
Mhm.
about that you're so deeply rooted and you have so much sacred reverence for your work, but you're like, I'm modernizing things. I bear with me, tongue twisters, modernizing things as I go forward. And it's like, that's the exciting journey. Can you take us to how you've been modernizing the medicine wheel, and talk about what the medicine wheel is? Because I only know a little bit about it. I would love to know more about it, really.
Sure, yeah. So the medicine wheel is what our ancestors used to know when there is something out of balance within ourselves. So it is the mind, body, spirit, which uh, pretty much in a nutshell, it's like you look at the medicine wheel and you check in with your spirit. How is your spirit? Is how's your relationship with creator, with with source? How's your practice? How's are you in whatever that looks like for you? Are you in prayer? Are you meditating? Are you putting that into practice? And if not, maybe there's an imbalance there that's potentially affecting your mood or how you're walking in your path because that's not that strong. Or maybe you have illness, so that's more of the physical part of the medicine wheel. And so we look at the physical, is there an illness? Are you having difficulties? Are you experiencing aches and pains? And if you are, well, is what might be going on there that's not in balance. Is it that you might need to do a detox? You might need to change the way you're eating? You might need a little bit more rest. So as we learn how to have a relationship with the wet medicine wheel and how that can pertain to us, it's a really good guide in how to restore balance within our life. And as far as how modernize it, I don't want to necessarily say I'm modernize it. I think what it is more of I'm learning how to bring both so that there's more tools available to us. So that it's basically more in our medicine bag to work with, as opposed to it has to only look this way or only has to look that way. There's room for more. There's room for all of it. The more there is available to us, then we can explore deeper into how we can grow, how what the spiritual path looks like, how we can straighten our gifts because perhaps something over here is not working, but then something that our ancestors used to do, like implement uh, for example, more of the herbs into our healing, um, that might be something that our body needs. So it's learning a little bit of all of it and then knowing how to bring it all so that it works for us. So it's not so much modernizing it because one thing I was clear that spirit told me is, or my ancestors told me is, always honor the traditions.
Yeah.
The traditions, but it's okay to bring them forward. In fact, we want you to continue bringing them forward and continue speaking about them and teaching them so that they never are forgotten.
Gotcha. So it's just bringing the information forward in a way where it's more understood and more in the current. So it's not making everything more current. It's just about presenting it to more current understanding so they can accept their
Yeah.
traditions. Got it. Okay, I understand. I appreciate that. What kind of medicine healing, what kind of herbal healing have you been incorporating currently, and what are some of your favorite ways to do that within your healing sessions?
Wow. So that's a lot of different kinds.
It is.
So I do have some more of like a sacred. They're all sacred, but I'm trying to word it here. I don't know how much, I gotta be mindful of what I'm sharing, how I'm sharing it.
Sure,
But
sure.
it is a very sacred tradition where we're working with master teachers. I'll say it that way. So master plant teachers. So I hold those type of ceremonies, and then I also hold breathing journeys, and so that's working with our breath and allowing us to explore within, but also it expands our consciousness because as we're using our breath, I'm sure you know, your viewers know, your listeners know, that is very powerful. It's how we work with energy, how we're able to move energy with our breath, with intention, with purpose. And as we're, breathing, we call it in what we want, we release what we don't, but we're also filling our bodies with the oxygen. Our mind is, getting tapped into the both subconscious and the conscious. So it allows both parts of our brain to be activated and have an experience where we can go into, different dimensions, but also be very present. And so I do, that type of work. And then there's the work that I do in person, more of integrative work. And that's for anybody that wants to work a little bit deeper in their own healing process or journey. And that might look different for everyone. So integrative work is also part of what I do. And again, I'll bring in, depending on what their needs are, a little bit of, the different types of modalities. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
How do you guide and assist people during your breathwork journeys?
Mm. So that was a gift given to me by one of my spirit helpers, Running Horse. And so what I was shown is to put it together as into a ceremony per se. So I do incorporate a little bit of the ancient medicines into an altar. So I create an altar in the center, and then we gather. We go through the process of smudging. So that's where the ancient part, right, the indigenous part comes in, because we want to make sure that the space is clear. We call in the directions. We call in our ancestors. And so as everybody is doing their breath work, I guide them through this journey with my drum. I'm channeling, I'm singing prayer songs, maybe chants, um, whatever it is that's coming through me at the moment for that particular journey is what's being activated, because it truly
Absolutely.
is being activated in the space and in people because it's moving so much. It's it's just a very powerful space that spirit has put together, because really it's not me. I'm just the tool, so to speak. But they're very sacred circles.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's guided through the heartbeat, the drum.
That's really beautiful how you have all these tools and you honestly say, I'm very guided by the group of the energy. I'm very guided in the moment, like how I'm going to strike my drum and work with people is just I'm in the moment, right?
Right.
Um take me back to I guess the start of when you decided to be a healer.
Oh,
I've never heard that story. I'm really excited to hear about when you're I want to do this or yeah, I'm going to become a healer. I want to know.
yeah. I love that question because I don't know how it looks for other people, but for me, it was quite messy.
I like that.
And there was so much resistance around it because I really didn't have any kind of well, I shouldn't say I was going to say any decision making in this whole part of it. We always do, right? Free will. But what I'm saying is that, when you're born into this purpose, you're going to end up following it, or you're going to keep getting bumped and bruised until you say, okay, I surrender. And so for me, it was a lot of lessons before I said, okay, okay. But I feel that, oh, wow. So it was really through finding my own healing that I came into this path. So I went through a lot, as I'm sure many of us on this path do. And I was in search of a lot of um, soul searching, really. And through that, I was also a single mom, very young single mom. And I was looking more so in the physical realm to be supported financially. And so I was like, what am I going to do? I need to support my children and I need to support myself. So at that time, I was presented with the choice of what do I do that is flexible and I can still spend time with my girls. And so it was between being a certified trainer because I loved working out. I still, I do, but I'm not as where I want to be. So it was between being a certified trainer or going to massage school. Well, I ended up going to massage school, and then from there, which spirit was already, I mean, that was already set, I think, in the Akashic records. Um, but so once I went into the school, I started really noticing things that I may have noticed before, but it was just kind of like, kind of like you were sharing earlier about the signs, right? They come
Yeah.
up to us to really pay attention to them. So I started paying attention to the signs and I started getting curious and asking more questions. So during my course there at the school, I started really gravitating to people that were on this path. And I remember this man that was in the class, he was an older man. And there was a girl in the class where she was experiencing having a headache. And from the across the room, he's doing some energy work. I'm watching. And I'm just like, oh my God, because I understood, but I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I recognized it somehow, right? But I wasn't sure. So then he saw me staring at him, and he approached me during one of the breaks and says, "Do you want to learn how to do that?" And I'm like,
Wow.
"Yeah." I said, "Well, what is it that you're doing?" And mind you, I had already exchanged words with him because he was in our class. So long story short, I took him up on his offer, and I we met after class at a park, and he was explaining to me he was doing energy work and he was moving the energy where it was stuck. That just fascinated me, and I was like, wow. And then from that point, it all started in the massage school because we went into doing some breath work to learn how to use our breath. Well, in that journey, in that breath work session for myself, I found the biggest release, and is when I found my connection to running horse.
Wow.
And this was, I'm talking about years ago. So that was my first meet with running horse, who then gifted me the breathing journey. Was the breath work of me doing that work. It just started snowballing into all these different branches, and I think I just never really looked back. And I never really saw it as, okay, I'm going to do this work. It was more of, I didn't even realize I was already doing the work because I thought I was living a different life, but I kept gravitating back to going into a sweat lodge now. And then having that experience was like mind blowing. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me. I'm home here. And after that, I just started attending and learning, but it took a lot of unraveling and undoing in my own hurt, and all my traumas and all the things that were not serving me. It took all that to realize, oh, this is who I am, and then really accept this as my path.
It's a testament of how you're able to do that for other people because you've walked it. You did so much. What were the things that you were finding that you were just cleansing and releasing and cleansing and releasing, or what did you always go back to help assist that? Like for me, it's like salt and water and mint and chamomile. I could go into it, but
Yeah.
I'm just like thinking about like just like herbs off the top that I've just used to just like ginger and the things that my body calls like, hey, you need this now, or like, you need to cleanse, you need to release in these ways. So I'm being very general, of course, but what were you called back to as you were cleansing and releasing and cleansing and releasing?
Well, see, I love that you said that you listen to what your needs are, because that's what it's about, and that's part of my teaching is have a relationship with yourself and listen to what your needs are, because it is different for everybody. And so for me, it just really varies and depends on what I'm processing. And because, I mean, to answer what is it that I would go back to for my process, I still am going through the process. I think we all do,
Yeah.
right? I don't
Yes.
think it ever really ends. So even now, depends on, I'm right now currently doing a detox. I'm doing a very deep detox internally of all my organs, because that's what my body was asking for. But then when it's an energetic cleanse, I love going to the cedar, the copal, the sage. Those are very ancestral healing tools for me. Those are medicines that just really bring my soul back into center, to my heart, right? Um, so I think it is really just relevant to what it is that we're processing, really. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can you talk about like your connection to like sage and copal? You're talking about that. Um, what are your favorite ways to use it? Because I'm curious too, because I would say I wouldn't use sage so much. Like sometimes I use it to cleanse the air, right? But I'll use, let's say, essential oils more. But tell me your favorite ways to use sage and copal.
Yeah. So my favorite ways are always no, always no, no. I feel in ceremony are my absolute favorite ways, because it really creates a container where you can just
Yeah.
feel the energy shift. For me, it anchors me, but also it expands me at the same time. So
Yeah.
it brings in the all the ancestors for sure, because they love the smell. You know what?
Yeah.
I was sitting in a meditation one time, and I realized that as I'm in prayer in meditation, and I'm burning my copal and my cedar, and all this sacred smoke is going up, I was very connected in council at that moment with my ancestors, and they said thank you, because every time you burn these, it goes up to where we're at and we're receiving it, and it just brings us together in this moment. It's like bridging the realms. So for me now, it's like, oh, I can have it as often as I want to. So when I feel like I want to, call in my ancestors, usually is in a ceremony setting, that's my go-to. So that's when I use it. But as far as like, why would I use sage versus why would I use gopal? Um, that does have a little bit of specifics, right? Like for me, the sage is more of the general clearing and keeping your space balanced, more of the daily use. Um, you cleanse before you enter a sacred space. And then the copal and the cedar, those are once you're already in the ceremony. So
Oh, yeah.
you're making an offering. You're constantly making an offering, a prayer of copal, of cedar. Copal for me is more masculine. It could be different for somebody else, but for me, it's a little bit more masculine. And so the cedar is more feminine. It has a sweetness. So then if I want to create more of the sweetness in the space, I might use more cedar. So really knowing the different types of incense, that will also help you understand what you want to create in the space or what you want to call in.
Yeah, I'm taking it all in because I've never used Gopal. I think I've used cedar once a long time ago. And you're real, and I'm just like, aha, aha. You're giving me aha moments as you're talking, and it was just beautiful how you talked about how the yeah, I would say like the smoke. It's not really smoke, but like the sage in the air, or the like. Even when I've had the cedar in the air, it does create a container. You're right. It's a very different energy than just if you have essential oils going through air. Beautifully described and talked about, and I do think there's like certain practices that we do that does connect us specifically to other energies. So it would make sense like within your connection to your ancestors that sage just brings that in. It just it may it just all these beautiful ahas I had as you were talking about it. So
Yeah.
thank you for being so
Oh,
clear.
of course. Yeah. And, just to speak into the essential oils, I work with them as well. They're just as beautiful and healing and sacred. I just use them differently. So
Yeah.
for me, I might use them in, for example, a massage. When I'm doing body work, because it's just a way of just bringing that space and that clarity that you're breathing in. A different scent will create a different relaxation in your body. Perhaps you're using lavender, so really using the essential oils are beautiful as well. You might want to put a little bit in the diffuser, and that creates a space, right? You might want to use eucalyptus, and that serves for the purpose of breathing. And that's what going back to what I was saying at the beginning is there's room for all of it. And so that's how bringing in and merging and knowing how to work with all of it, I think it's important and beautiful.
Absolutely. Can you also talk about your copal, like masculine versus cedar feminine, and the different times that you use it within the ceremony?
Sure. So I really feel as I use it, it's more of a guided, right? It's my relationship to where I'm also gauging the energy of the space, and when I might need something a little bit more grounding or something a little bit more, if somebody's going through something that they might need a little bit more support, in a little bit more grounding way, I might incorporate copal. If somebody needs support in a nurturing way, I might incorporate cedar. And so it's really like kind of also gauging the space, and goes back to being able to have a relationship with the people and meet them where they're at, so that you're supporting their process and not so much just, oh, what is it that you want to bring in. It's how do you
Yeah.
support the space and what they're processing, and having that understanding of how to work with this sacred incense and the sacred smoke, will create that process. It will help their process as well.
It's so interesting to hear all the different ways to support the process because they're infinite.
Oh yeah.
They're infinite. I wanted to ask you too. You mentioned a really important story earlier about when you were in massage school and you had that awakening where you had spirit come to you and they started becoming a guide with you.
Yeah.
Can you share your first experience?
Oh yeah. So I was in this breath work class, and in order for us to learn it, we need to experience it. That's, I think for me, it's hands on, and that's how I learn. And I'm glad that they do it that way, because that was so profound for me. That moment right there, I realized how powerful our breath is, because it took me into a beautiful journey, into where I had no idea that I was able to have a connection or a vision and feel my guides that way. It was all new to me. And so at that moment, I saw myself become the eagle, and I was soaring, just like viewing everything. And I recall I was in that moment saying, oh my gosh, I'm an eagle. Oh my gosh, I'm experiencing all this, and this is real. And how could this be? But at the same time, I was accepting it, I was embracing it. And then all of a sudden, I land, um, at this like beautiful hillside. It was like almost like a desert type, but it was like way back. I mean, it took me back into a different time. And then that's where Running Horse was waiting there, with he had his horse with him, and this beautiful, huge, a headdress. Traditionally, women don't wear headdress. Um, but it was a symbol of, this is, I'm gifting you this because you are stepping into a responsibility, and do you want to accept it? And I was like, whoa. And at that moment I realized, okay, my path is about to change. And I was really nervous about accepting it, but I was so overwhelmed, and I felt so honored in that moment. And I said, yeah, I accepted it. And when I came out of my journey, I really felt like that I shifted at that moment. Something changed. And that was part of that experience.
And
Yeah.
did you start working with running a horse right away, or did he evolve kind of into your healings more and more?
He evolved because I still didn't recognize how to call him in. I was brand new. I just knew he showed up. And so I was like, how can I do this? And I mean, now I know he's always here. I mean, he's here now and they're always available to us, right? We can just call running horse and they're here because it takes for us to call on them and they're available to us. But I was so in my head in the analytical part at that time. It's like, how do I do this? It seems so impossible. I want him back. So at the beginning, I didn't really incorporate him into my life or in my healings as often because I thought I had to do something specific to have him come, if that makes sense.
Yes, it
Uh,
does. Yes.
yeah, so it did take a while to build a relationship with him, but I think that's the way it was supposed to be because I probably wouldn't have been ready for it had it been too fast. Yeah, so it
Yeah,
wasn't. Yeah,
that makes sense. When he does come, even though he can come at any time, when he does come, does he come for a purpose to help guide others? Does he step into certain healings with a specific energy usually?
yes, specifically for breathing journey, and I will channel him. Now it's evolved into not just him. There's also other that come in and I channel. But at the beginning, it was mostly him, and he would come in and just do healing work on people. And even as I start talking, and I can kind of feel him coming in a little bit, so I'm like, hold on, come back off a little bit. Um, I start changing. My tone starts changing. The songs are different. My voice changes, and
Wow.
it's for the purpose of him coming to doctor people. That's the best way I could say it. Yeah.
That makes sense. I would love to hear, yeah, about those environments too, because during healing sessions, there's so much energy going on, and you're facilitating the healing session, but running horse is doing something too as well, and you're in this state where you can't always be aware of what running horse is doing, and then there's other spirit coming forth, and it's so kind of interesting to talk about because when you hear feedback from people, you can hear things like, "Oh, I felt that your hands were on me, but then, giving me energy or, being with me. And I kind of peek out of the corner of my eye and you're across the room, or I felt like we were all moving, right? But we were all stationary. Things like that.
You hit right on. That's exactly what people say. I'm sitting at one corner and they say, I literally felt you sitting next to me, or I felt your steps around me. I'm like, that wasn't me. That was running a horse, or that was so and so, or that, because it's developed to where there's many come in. And they're not just my helpers, they're the people's helpers now as well. And so that kind of also came into a development of my awareness because I realized that, whoa, this room is filled, but everybody's helpers there to doctor them or to have a conversation with them, to be in counsel with them. So it has evolved into this amazing, beautiful space where we collectively just sit in meditation or prayer, get doctored, get insight, get guided, and it's amazing. So my relationship with him has strengthened to where now he sits more on the side with me and feeds me energy as opposed to now going around because I learned to not just allow my energy to be in the space and working per se. I
Yeah.
learned to have people step into their own power and feel their own energy and
Yeah.
upon their helpers. So that
Yeah.
way they're they know that they could do this whenever they leave. It doesn't have to be just in that space.
That makes a lot of sense. You've done so much work with this that your strength is holding that vibration so it can happen for others.
Right. So
That's
yeah,
powerful. Yeah.
yeah. So it's about holding the space. It's not about doing so much as holding the space and allow them to experience their own process.
And it's such an interesting concept because I think when people think about holding space, they think like, okay, you're there for a person, and yes, you make a person feel comfortable, but when you're holding space, like you're doing a lot with the energy still, even though it's very different than what the active parts of you were doing years ago.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and that's where the copal comes in. That's where the cedar comes in. Is those are also very amazing helpers because they have a spirit as well. And so as they're in the space clearing, they're helping balance that energy, or for it not to get so draining, or it's just clearing whatever people are releasing. So that's a big important part of why working with sacred smoke is a part of ceremony or the healings. Yeah, because it can become a little overwhelming sometimes if we're not mindful of keeping it balanced or cleared during.
Absolutely. There's so much being released and changed and moved that I'd imagine that, as holding space, you are so much aware of how to calm, protect, be in flow of keeping that in harmony, that space in harmony for everybody.
Absolutely, yes, it takes a lot of awareness.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any favorite guides or energies that help calm the energy, that help protect the energy in a space like that, so things can continue to amplify?
Yeah, well, particularly Maria Sabina.
Maria
I
Sabina.
Maria Sabina, she is one who is she was in real she lived on this realm, but now she crossed over. So when she's yeah, her energy is very nurturing. She worked with the plant teachers, well, psilocybin, and when she
Yeah.
was alive, she was an amazing lady who led, and so she really learned how to help people physically and spiritually. So when she comes in, she brings that balance of being able to guide them in both, this realm and the spiritual realm. So I love when she comes in. And another one would also be Oliva Arevalos, which is
Oh,
also someone, mhm, which is also someone who worked with a master plant. And her icaros are amazing. And what icaros are songs, prayer songs. The vibration that she brings into the space through those prayer songs really moved things in such a beautiful way in people's hearts. So I feel that I mean, they all do. They all have they serve their purpose, but you could just feel a difference, a different type of motherly love, or yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those things you can't really put into words. You have to experience to
for
know.
sure.
Yeah.
That sound vibration, yeah, I can only imagine what kind of energy is coming out. And I think it's important to talk about many different types of medicine, not only sound healing but even plant medicine. Like, that's backed, and not only is it sacred ancestral work, but it's backed by science, what it's able to do for the body, the brain, people's trauma, people's emotional self, and even spiritual self. It really creates a new structure within the brain and new feelings within the body where people do open up.
Yes, absolutely. It's remarkable and on so many levels. It is helping people with PTSD and depression, and just really becoming back in balance. It just helps so much. Um, it's just yeah. I get overwhelmed with just thinking of how beautiful these sacraments are. Um, and I just wish that there was more, I guess, ability to have conversations without being stigmatized, one,
Yeah.
and or having the, oh my gosh, well, can we talk about this? Because we're now gratefully coming into a time where they are starting to become recognized, but we're still not there yet. as
Right.
healers, as a medicine, as being something that is very helpful to humanity. But unfortunately, we're still working through it.
It's really true. There's plant medicine or psilocybin we were talking about for a second. It is technical, there's research behind it, but there's a lot of people who are still learning about what it is. And then when we talk about even the spiritual things, and that is really out there too, even just from a healer sense. As I'm talking with you, I'm talking between the lines with you. I'm having a serious discussion, but as I'm talking with you, I'm aware of that there's so many other things, and I'm not bringing up everything because some of the stuff really sounds out there as well, but it's easier to kind of jump and talk about and describe things when we're spiritually recounting something than with just something physical like an actual plant and talking about it and talking about what it can be. Yeah.
Yes.
So in both realms, we're still not at that point. I hear you. I feel you.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. We're all still learning through everything, and going through a time right now where I feel people are more aware, but even just being able to speak about our ancestors and our spirit helpers and our spirit, even that was taboo for a very long time. I think we just now became into a time where it's okay to speak about that freely without being judged or looked at like, burner at the stake.
For real.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's just being mindful of the conversations that people are ready for. And that's again going back to, feeling the temperature of where we're at, who's around the conversation, and then just introduce it and just let us sit. And then if people are curious, they can ask more questions, they could research more. But I think it's important that people start really, at least having this awareness, and then what they do with
Yes.
it is up to them.
For sure. I mean, when I got into energy work, I definitely believed that there was ancestors, but then when I was actually deep into the energy healing and work of doing it, I was like, oh, not only is the concept there, like it's legitimately experience. It's legitimately, you are communing, you are feeling ancestors. It's not just an idea. It's not just the traditional idea and respect and reverence. It's actually like a person standing in front of you. It's a thing. It's real.
Yeah. And
You
I mean,
know?
trust me, I can see how that can be like, what, when you're talking to someone that has really just barely touched the surface, it can seem way out there, because I was one of those people. As I started unraveling and learning about this path and my gifts, I too was like, whoa, this is real. Like, I mean, it's real because I'm feeling it, I can see it, I can, all my senses are in it. How could this not be real? I mean, I exist. Why wouldn't something else exist? And then I started going into those thoughts. How little of me to think that I was the only thing that was important to exist.
Yeah, that's profound.
Yeah,
For real. How limited of us to think that our perception of it's not real is so valid. It's just one little perception of the vastness of potential and
right.
possibility.
Yes,
I
yeah,
agree with you. I
yeah,
I agree with you.
yeah, yeah. When I had that realization, I was like, wow, yeah. Why would I think that I'm the only, no, there's so much out there that we don't know. And that's the beauty of it, that we get to explore. If we choose to, we get to learn. And that's a big part of why we're in, having this experience, is to evolve, to learn, to, just have fun.
Yeah, it never gets old. There's always curiosity that fuels all of this, and that's why it's so great. I want to jump to, please let me know if there's anything on your mind or your heart too before we do so, but I want to jump to some questions that people are asking as well.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, away we go then. Let's see. I'm gonna pull up. Someone asked a question. They were talking about their wife and them, they were walking to their car in their home, and no one was around, but they heard their name called. No one was physically around. And what do they need to do to learn more about what happened? So I guess it's a spiritual question. They heard their name being called, and it was both of them, not just one of them. And they're learning more of like how they can tune into the situation, what it represented, and how they can grow their gifts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's how do I answer it all in one, right?
I know. It was a compounded question. Sorry, it's a big one to start.
No, it's okay. It's good. I like this. Well, I mean, I will always encourage them. What does it mean to them? Like, what did it feel like? Did it feel familiar? Did it sound like? Did they recognize that voice? Meaning in spirit, was it somebody that was here and then recently crossed? So that's kind of how I start, kind of exploring, were you thinking of somebody at that moment or talking about somebody? These are just kind of ways to start unpacking or opening up that conversation even with the spirit, asking them directly, who are you? Because a lot of times we forget that we have access to asking them, just like you and I are speaking, Kelly. And I ask you a question, and we can do that with our loved ones in spirit. And then, as you said, wait for the next sign. But it's up to us to initiate and dialogue with them so that they can continue giving us those signs, because they give it to us all the time. But I would say, ask for more specific signs, and you'll be surprised. Boy, they give it to you. Just be ready for it, because I think that's where a lot of times people, they're not ready for it, and either they'll dismiss it as like, no, that was a coincidence, or they'll get freaked out and they're like, okay, I don't want to know. It goes either way. But I feel that if it is somebody, because I do feel like that is somebody, a loved one who is speaking to you, I would encourage you to dialogue and to ask more questions, because I feel that they're reaching out, and they're reaching out also in dreams. So just pay attention to the dreams. Ask for them to come in a softer way. If you're a person that doesn't want it in your face, and just ask for it to be in a way where you're going to be okay and open and accepting and receptive about it, because you'll see how much more of it will start coming in for you. But more than anything, I think it's up to us to initiate those conversations and to build the relationships with them so that they can continue coming in for us, because our senses are always working. We already are intuitive, but it's up to us to put it into action.
Absolutely. And yeah, it depends on kind of like Rosa was talking about it. There's a dialogue that is happening. Were you thinking about someone before that? Were you asking the spirit, I'd like to hear you more, I'd like to see you more? And all they did was listen, right? And sometimes we make it so mysterious, but maybe there are things, whether it's with a loved one, feelings, asking for guidance that led up to that moment. And it's just a conversation. So I loved how Rosa, encouraged those points. It's from Bushido. Yes. I don't think anything was going on. No one had died at the time or things like that. Oh yeah, it doesn't have to be someone who just passed away. It could just be thinking and feeling about someone we're connected to. They could have been gone for 20 years, but we're connected to them. They're encouraging us. How do you feel on that, Rosa?
Oh, absolutely. It could have been something, maybe they're going through like a big shift or a change, and they might have been asking for support or guidance through it. So there's different reasons of why we might be looking for, some kind of a sign, and, they come in to give us that support. So it's not necessarily that someone just passed, but maybe, we're going through a difficult time and we might be thinking of that loved one. So they come in, different reasons.
For sure. I guess the only thing I can think of to offer that is one time I was in Lilydale, and that's in New York. And I was doing, a lot of spiritual development, so I was very open and aware at that time. And I remember there was no reason why it would happen, like that I could actually think about. I just heard someone very clearly say my name and then say a full sentence. And I was just like, I was so aware that I was able to pick up what someone was thinking, or a spirit kind of encouraging something around me. I didn't tune into what it was about. It just happened so clearly that I was able to hear the sound of it. And so sometimes we're very open and we're just able to pick up on things, and it's nothing scary. We're just kind of hit with it. We're like, what's that? What's that?
Yeah.
So but it's probably a loved one helping you. You know what I mean? That's usually what it is. All right. So someone's asking about guides, seeing guides, and learning about how many we have.
Oh wow. So learning about them, you can, as far as your own individual and how to meet your guides, you can sit in a meditation, and again it goes back to asking, dialoguing, and it's so much more simpler than we make it. It's kind of what I was sharing, earlier, that I thought I had to do A, B, C, D, E before I called running horse in, but really they're already there with you. They're already, and so how you can become aware of them is make time, maybe at the beginning, until you start learning maybe how they feel, how their energy feels, and just take a couple of minutes to really hone in and set that intention, call them in, and start noticing, what do you feel at that moment, or are you seeing different colors, or are you smelling something? Use your senses, because they speak to us through our senses, and you'll start noticing that every time you sit and you call in a spirit helper, you're going to start noticing a shift in the energy space or within your body, and that's how you start recognizing who it is. Now, if you want specifics, then ask for specifics. It goes back to asking the questions. Make specific, questions, and say, please come in a dream and show me who you are, or give me a name, or show me, as I'm driving, show me on the next vehicle. And you'll be surprised. The license plates usually are very good at telling us, giving us information. So it's really about making that time and effort to have, to just have them come in.
It has to be experienced, and just be very patient and allowing. I think a lot of times we look for these big signs, and it's just sometimes those big signs are so spontaneous, then we keep expecting them to be spontaneous, right? Like, it
That's
happened
true.
once, or I had this experience once. Why isn't it like that? And we just have to slow down and let it happen and listen. We have to listen.
Mhm. It
Um,
does take time. It does, and it's a practice more than anything. It takes time and it takes patience, because sometimes it's like one of those things where all of a sudden you get that aha moment, and it just clicks for you, like, oh, that's who it is. Oh, I know now. And just having that awareness, not dismissing the little things, because we always do want the big wow factor, but the smaller ones are the ones that are really profound, because they're constantly happening. They're reoccurring. The bigger ones are like more far apart. They're impactful, but the little ones are the ones, like, when you find the feather, or when you were talking about the money, pennies in different places, dimes in different random places, and those are the things, that your spirit helpers are speaking to you.
Absolutely. And she was going into that she was talking to her guides, and for some reason she went outside and something told her to turn left, and there was a big great horned owl feather. She felt
Ooh.
like it was, so you talked about feathers, you're tuning into it. She felt like it was a gift from her guides, or love from the angels, and she cried with joy, and she wants to know, what did that sign mean?
She just said it. Right? She just
Right.
said exactly what it was. And
So
perfect example of, we want it to be more, and that was a lot right there, right? That was
right,
a
it's
lot.
true. It's
Yeah.
true. Like, so we were kind of, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to, say that she was in that thought. She walked out, and then to the left, there's an owl feather. Wow, like that. How much more of a sign could that be? That's profound.
That
That's yeah.
it is. Like that's a unique kind of feather too. A great horned owl. We were mentioning kind of earlier. We were talking about like signs and symbols with like ravens and crows. Somebody brought in, and when you see, so whether it's a feather or a raven or a crow or another even animal totem or a guide using an animal as a messenger, what have you found that that's meant to you, or what common animal totems present themselves in your journey, or that you've learned through other people's journey?
hmm Um, the ones that I particularly work with the most are the bear.
Oh yeah,
And yeah, bear. Bear is like the first foremost. I have a really profound relationship with bear medicine. But I also hawk also, and the owl. So a lot of the feathered ones come in. Um, and then of course, at any given time, any of the other animals, because they all carry their own purpose in medicine. As I always say that, because it's like one is not less than the other. Even the little ant, it's funny because sometimes people are like, I want to know what my animal sort of animal is, and they get something like a little ant or a fly, and they're like, why do I get? No, it's just as beautiful. um but it goes back to
that's a
depending. Yeah, go
You're
ahead.
making me laugh for a second. I'm just imagining like maybe someone gets a tiger for an animal totem and someone gets like a fly.
Right.
Like the vast difference. Yeah, just there's a chuckle, but yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt you.
no. It's beautiful because it is kind of funny. It is kind of funny, but at the same time, somebody did say one time, I have a bee. I was expecting this lion, and I have a bee. But I said, but then you got to, explore and what does the bee mean? Like, what does it represent? The sweetness of life, community, right? They're hard workers. And so when I started really explaining that there's, a lot of meaning to it, it's like, oh yeah. And so
Yeah,
they all are beautiful. But yeah, I mean it just depends, what we're processing again, who I might call on. The owl represents wisdom to me. They also are travelers of the night. So they're able to go
yeah,
into the darker dimensions or, into the higher realms. So, yeah, learning how to have a relationship with them because it goes back to our ancestors. They learned a lot about life, how to hunt, how to care for themselves by observing the animals. So, when they would eat certain foods, they would follow that, or what foods or plants to stay away from by observing the animal. What plants they would eat to doctor themselves, so that then they would do that. So, by really understanding the animals, it teaches us a lot about ourselves too.
it really does. I love to hear your your descriptions. I'm like, ooh, like travelers of the night. I like how that sounds, and I can it's cool that you brought up bee. That's one of my totems. I love bees. So I was like, ooh,
Oh, that's
like,
how I look at
I
it.
love to hear. I love to hear. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna give you validation on that. I'm like, ooh, well done. Like, I guess the last question we will take is that someone's asking about spirit guides, or their experiences with spirit, right? How can I tell the difference between a spirit guide from a not so nice spirit pretending to be a guide? So
Yes.
I guess discerning and working with different energies. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's a really, really good. I mean, they're all great, but I do work a lot with doing clearings around attachments and entities and that sort of stuff. That's one of actually my strong things of what people come to me for. And so what I'm going to say about that is that It does take time and practice, and that is why it's very important that when you're starting off, number one, you're not just kind of playing around with opening portals. You don't want to do that. You want to always have a safe container, a sacred space. And that's why I always call in my protectors, my ancestors. I open up the cardinal directions for that reason. That's one of the reasons. Um, but also, usually, if you are walking a path with good intentions and you're doing, work with good intentions, you don't come across things like that. But from time to time, there are what I call tricksters, of course, and I think that was the question. And so having a strong practice and discipline on protecting yourself, opening space, closing space, clearing yourself, I feel is a good way to hold that from not being a part of your experience. And then, say if something like that were to happen, you can feel the difference. You can. It usually drains your energy. Usually starts making people feel depressed, angry for no reason. Um, having health issues, unexplainable health issues. So then that's how you kind of can have a general idea of like, okay, there's something to look at here. Maybe there was an attachment or something that, I really didn't want to call in. And then that's when you would do what I call it a limpia, which is a deeper type of a cleanse. But just to answer the question, you can tell by those things that I mentioned, just see how you feel. Do you feel exhausted afterwards? You shouldn't feel exhausted. I mean, doing energy work is tiring, but then usually you can recharge yourself by doing like the salt baths, doing the smudging, taking a good rest, night rest. The next day you'll feel fine. But when it's something that's attached to you, it doesn't matter how much you do of all that, you still feel drained. So that's a good indicator.
Yeah. Beautifully said, well said. Really be in touch with those feelings. I think that's a beautiful way to just start. Um, Rosa, you've taught us so much. Someone even says, thank you so much for, I'm pulling up they said, thank you so much for the beautiful knowledge being shared. So I just wanted to make sure you heard that wonderful compliment. And where can people find you? Whether it's like, I don't know if you do distance healings as well as like in persons, but where can people find you and what classes or offerings do you have for people?
Yeah. So currently my website's being rebuilt because I just opened up a PMA ministry. And so now I'm
Ooh,
just kind of switching everything under the ministry. And if you'd like to be a member, then where you can find me right now is through social media on Instagram. The name of the ministry is Spiritual House of Indigenous Medicine.
beautiful. Spiritual House of Indigenous Medicine. So yeah, so you're gonna be doing a lot there and just expanding that. I can imagine. And
Um, so if they want to find just my personal page, then they can find me under Rosa Raya, yes. But if it's for any of the classes, workshops, sessions, that sort of stuff, it's going to be under the ministry. I had a great time. Callie, thank you for inviting me. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get back um, into the podcast here, but it was an amazing time. I appreciate you and appreciate all the viewers. Thank you. You guys know where to find me. Again, that's Spiritual House of Indigenous Medicine.